Good morning. I now call the February 6, 2020 special work session of the Marion County School Board to order at 9:01 a.m. Please silence your electronic devices to avoid disturbing others. I now ask the school board attorney to explain the rules for this board meeting.
This work session is a public meeting as defined in Florida's Sunshine Law. The board is dedicated to full transparency in its meetings and its work. In compliance with the Sunshine Law, the board has adopted uniform meeting procedures, including the right for citizens to participate. The board will allow public comments regarding any work session item listed on today's agenda at the appropriate time. Speakers must fill out a request form and hand it to the school board secretary. After the board and superintendent have completed their discussion on a particular agenda item, the secretary will call speakers' names in the order received. At the podium, speakers are asked to state their full name and address and to spell their last name. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. As required by Sunshine Law, the board must maintain orderly conduct and proper decorum throughout this meeting. Speakers may criticize subject matter and decisions in a respectful manner, but not people. Finally, speakers must be very careful not to violate the privacy rights of others, especially students and their family members, by mentioning their name or other identifying information. Thank you for your attention.
We will now begin the special work session with the superintendent's administrative briefing.
Good morning and thank you and happy Thursday to all of you. I want you to know that we are monitoring the weather. We're expected to have severe weather coming through this area between 10 p.m. tonight and 2 a.m. in the morning. So that shouldn't affect transportation at all, but again, we're monitoring that, and we've got everybody at the school sites, taking care of things and, getting the sheep in.
Yes.
Getting the sheep in and just taking care of the little details like that. So, again, we're monitoring it, and thanks to Becky Aurora for answering my text message at 5 a.m. this morning when I asked, when I got the latest weather report, and she zipped right back with what the plans were for buses. Also, this morning, we emailed you the agenda for the state board meeting, which is next week. You'll notice on the agenda that Evergreen is topic number 11, and that comes towards the very end of the meeting. The first topic will be the presentation and the potential adoption of the new standard. So that will be a very lengthy meeting. And yesterday, I received a call from Melissa Ramsey from the DOE, and they are still pondering whether or not we will have presentation time at that time, or whether it will be either a blanket approval or denial of the plan. So we'll keep you abreast of that. But again, we're topic number 11, so that will be much later in the day. And that's all I have today.
Can I ask Dr. Muir something?
Yes.
What do you think of the standards? You're a teacher. I respect your understanding of standards. We've had a lot of discussions about that over the years. What's your thumbs up, are you in the middle?
I think they did a good job. I would have liked more in-depth reading standards, a little bit more precise with that, with a little bit more emphasis on phonics. I appreciate the fact that they integrated social studies into reading and have a really exemplary reading list attached to the standards, so that's a plus. But I think too that the standards themselves, especially in this county, are in great hands, and that they'll be implemented with fidelity plus 100% more. So I think it's a great time for us in education here in Florida.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to have our first presentation, fiscal year 2019-2020 budget updates as of December 31st, 2019. Ms. Boston, our Chief Financial Officer, will give that.
I see a slight smile, so that's a good thing.
Or did you just take a relaxing pill?
Transparent.
Or did you just take a happy pill?
Chair Cummings, Vice Chair Thrower, board members, Superintendent Mayor, Mrs. Prestipino, and Attorney Green. Good morning.
Morning.
Last year, under the leadership of Mrs. King, she recommended that we start doing sort of a mid-year budget review. I think at the time, she wanted to make sure that our new board members had additional information, but I think that was a great idea, and just wanted to let you know we will come before you anytime. The first 6 months of the year, not much activity occurs. There's some ins and some outs, but we're going to go through what we know, which is July through December, and then provide some additional information to you based on the third calculation, which we received in January. And what the third calculation is, we have actual October count and an estimate for February. So we're going to update you on what we look like in terms of generating revenue for the third calc. You should have a handout that looks like this, our favorite schedule. And we're going to use that in conjunction with the handout. And before I continue, I just always like to give kudos out to the staff. I'm standing here before you, but there are people that work with me on a day-to-day basis, and they answer all my questions so that I feel like I am able to address any questions you may have. But I want to thank the staff that's in here and the ones that are probably listening. So let's just start with the funding recap for the current fiscal year. You might remember that we had an increase in the base student allocation of $75.07. And what that is the dollar amount that every student in the entire state of Florida gets allocated. The prior year, you may remember, it was 47 cents.
That's correct.
So there was some adjustments made. And what the base student allocation allows is flexibility. So those dollars aren't earmarked for categorical, and they're usually used to fill the gap for the other expenses that we have, such as FRS or additional health insurance, those kinds of things. Safe schools went up about $318,000. So now our safe school allocation is $2.7 million. Our mental health, that was a new allocation 2 years ago. It went up about $81,000. So now we're at $1.1 million for the mental health allocation. We did receive some reductions. Our digital classroom, as you recall, that was reduced by about $800,000. Also, our ESE guaranteed funds were reduced. Our virtual education also experienced a small reduction. There were some new allocations. Turnaround school supplement, we were allocated $1.5 million. And then we did get a new grant for a school teacher grant. It was basically for Evergreen and Oakcrest, and bonuses were awarded out of that grant under the Special Revenue Fund. We continued to receive that funding compression adjustment. As you recall, maybe 3 years ago, $3.4 million, and every year we hold our breath. And basically what that says is our funding per student is lower than a lot of other districts. So we get a boost in revenue of about $3.4 million. We got that this year. PICO maintenance went away. It was all allocated to the charter schools, $150 million for the state of Florida. And our property values increased, which was really good, about 7.57%. So that's increase to our local dollars as well as capital. Just a reminder that our budget includes a lot of different funds. And the original budget was $593 million, that's at the bottom. And it has been adjusted to $599.9 million, just $600 million. I've noted a lot of items in the blue, and we call those restricted funds because there are specific things that we spend those dollars on. So our operating budget is pretty much the only fund that we have a flexibility in, and even within that fund, there are categoricals, such as safe schools, transportation. We can only use certain dollars, and I believe our categoricals are up to about $90 million this year. So our original budget was 593.4 million. The revised is around 600 million. So we had an increase of 6.6 million. And just to highlight some of the things that were in that increase, the general fund had an increase of 1.3 million, which included an increase in our Florida School Recognition Grant. More schools were awarded that grant, so that budget was increased almost $1 million. The Restart Grant, we recognized more revenue. We spent more money out of that, and that was for the Irma, that we got the grant for Irma, and that went mostly towards the generators, Bellevue High, Bellevue Middle, and Westport. Then we had some miscellaneous items, which include wellness incentive, advertising collections, and transfers from the internal funds. And this is when the schools or the internal funds purchase probably things like equipment, and we like to keep those kind of things in the general fund. So they'll transfer the money to the general fund, and those items will be purchased there. The special revenue fund increased 5.2 million, which is very typical. We put the entitlements in the original budget, and then as grants, additional grants are approved, those are included. The Title IV grant was 1.3 million, student support and academic enrichment. I think that was for our magnet schools. And then the 21st Century grant was another almost $1 million. And then our Title I Unified School Improvement Grant was amended, $738,000. So again, the entire budget was amended for $6.6 million, and the most of that occurred in the general fund and the special revenue fund. So at this time, if you will pull out handout 1, that's the very top. And on this slide, if you look down at the circled item, total state and local funding, our original budget was $313.3 million. All of the categoricals are highlighted in blue. But if you move to the handout, you can see this has been updated for the third calculation. And lest we get excited that we have additional revenue, I wanted to point out to you on the handout 1 that those things in red are items that are taken straight off of our revenue allocation. So even though it appeared that we had about $6 million increase, and I'll go over that in more detail, I just wanted to show you that there are items that are being reduced to the tune of about $5 million. The proration is basically looking at what the all school districts were allocated, and when the third calc came through, more districts earned money because of the students that were in attendance on the October count. But instead of giving us additional money, the reduction is allocated over all school districts. So that's why you see us having a proration to apportionment of $443,000. We had prior year adjustments. That was basically from an audit, an FTE audit, and those things have been addressed, so we don't expect to see that anymore. That was almost $500,000. But the big item is the McKay Scholarship, and you're familiar with McKay, but a new scholarship this year was Family Empowerment. We did not have those students included in our original FTE, but when Vicki Vaughn's and her group were getting together the October count, they got information from DOE saying these students are eligible for family empowerment. We had much discussion between Vicki Vaughn's and Stephen Ayers trying to figure out where these kids were coming from, because we have been projected to be in declining enrollment. And based on our discussions with them, it appears that these are students that are currently in private schools that are eligible for this new scholarship, and they're taking advantage of it. Oh. So it's not like we're getting additional students. It's just a different group, and they're using the new family empowerment.
What is the family empowerment refreshment?
It's a scholarship, just like.
What's the criteria?
It has a income level criteria. The students don't have to be, with McKay, you have to have been in the system a
Yeah.
year. This, they do not have to be.
Oh, wow.
And-
So this is brand new?
For like a low income?
Yes.
While
Well,
Mr. Ayers moving.
Yeah. Can you explain a little bit?
I'm sorry, we're sorry, Ms. Boston Ellis.
no, I'm
Because
glad
you were,
he's here.
because you were in the stride then. You,
Didn't mean to break your
No,
stride.
you're good.
That's a song, isn't it? Yeah, the Family Empowerment Scholarship is a new scholarship that was designed, and it's for lower income families. And the issue, the one caveat with that is, they didn't have to be currently enrolled in Marion County Public Schools to get it. They just had to be a resident of Marion County and then qualify for it. They applied directly. That doesn't go through my office. They apply directly through DOE. So we don't even know that this is happening until we got the survey count that said all these students are applied. Then we had to verify, hey, were they here? Are they currently enrolled in your school? Because they don't want them to double dip. So that's what we went through and did. But what we discovered is a lot of the students were currently attending private schools already that qualify. So of course, they're going to want to take advantage of to get that scholarship. So it's not anything that flows through my office at all, but we did account for them.
So what portion of that
Yeah.
was that?
How
What
much of
portion
the
was
4
the
million?
family empowerment?
Is it about 4 million?
No, I mean, take the McKay out.
And that's on one of, excuse me, and that is on one of the handouts.
Okay.
The family empowerment was
Go back down.
1.8 million,
Okay,
and McKay was 2.3 million, but we'll get to that.
okay.
Okay, yeah. I had not even heard of that, had you?
It was brand new, and I believe they used all the money that was appropriated for it. And what we've heard is they're going to double it next year, or that's what the governor wants to do.
I knew they had it, but I didn't understand how it was going to flow.
Just like McKay. So we report, as Mr. Ayers stated, we report the students, but the money goes directly to,
I knew about it, but I didn't know, I thought they'd flow it straight to the school, so it flows through us and to
we
the...
have to report it, but it goes to the schools. or to
Okay,
the
all right, okay, we're just,
yeah, it doesn't flow through us at all. We
but
just
the McKay,
report
does
it.
the McKay flow through us
Yes, but no, that goes directly to the parents. But they
or
include
to the
them.
school?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
But they include them in our FTE because they are students in Marion County.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
So that's what we're going to have to keep our eyes out on, what students are taking advantage of this scholarship.
Bet more would if they even understood about it.
Yes, ma'am. And from the analysis that LaToya did, Ms. Gary did, it looked like it was kindergarten, first, and some second grade. K-3.
Okay.
So let's talk about the general operating fund. The original budget at the bottom, $334.4 million, and we have amended it to $335.8 million. Again, we talked about the budget amendment. It included the Restart Grant, Florida School Recognition, and then some local sources. Again, just look at our allocation, $222.1 million from the state, 31% or 103 million from local. And you know from, I'm sure, all of your training, that in order to receive the state money, we are required to raise funds locally. And they set the millage, our legislators set the millage. So, general fund operating, revenues collected total $158.5 million, and that equates to 47%. And you can see the numbers on handout 2. We gave everything to you numerically. You may have noticed that the financial reports monthly have been changed. Again, staff has looked at that and tried to create something that is easier to look at than what we've provided in the past. But just to let you know, percentage of budget collected, overall again, 47%, which equates to $158.5 million. And if you look at each component of the revenue, we've collected 49% of federal, 34% from federal through state, 51% from the state, and 39% from the local, and then transfers and other financing sources, 60%. So that's pretty average about where we look to be around the month of December. And then taking a look at our general fund operating budgeted expenditures, again, the change that occurred in there is in line with pretty much the same as the revenue. In addition to that, there were some increased expenditures related to payouts that were outside of the budget, and then, of course, some revenue adjustments as well. I would like to bring to your attention that our budgeted expenditures are about 78% salary and benefits. And I always want to bring that to your attention when you think about what disposable revenue we have. It's not very much, because
Right.
78% of that budget is going towards salaries and benefits. Purchase services includes things like contracted services, all our therapists and OTPT, those types of folks. A lot of that is in purchase services. Of course, energy, and then materials and supplies. It's not just our paper pencil, that's also our textbook expenditures.
Is our digital textbook expenditures in there, or is?
Yes.
So that's everything?
Everything. On the general fund actual expenditures, we have spent $146.8 million through December. That's about 41%, again, in line with what we normally do. You'll see 42% salaries, 35% employee benefits, so forth, purchase services. The only thing that I would bring to your attention is some of these look low, but we have not finalized negotiations yet, so the salary increases and the associated benefits are not included at this point. So I expect that to peak once those resolutions.
Those are retroactive, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So that'll go back, all the way back to July 1?
Yes. And again, I love to remind you about where we need to be in terms of fund balance. We are required 3%. The auditors recommend 5 to 7%. And as we look at things like our aging buildings, I think that is very important, because we have had some expenditures that have occurred that we didn't anticipate as it relates to just operating. And right now, what we're doing is moving money around. So if someone needs some additional money, say in technical services, we say, spend your budget. And if at the end you need something, we'll provide it. So we're doing that right now. So right now, we are projecting that we'll be within that 7.54% of revenue at the end of the year. Again, this is based on actual salaries paid to date, projected salaries based on the people who are working in December, including projections for things like salary increases. We do take the position that anything that is outside of salary and fringe, that it will be spent. Knowing that things like categoricals, they won't spend all of those dollars, but we have to roll them over to the next year. It's our desire to get that number up higher and higher as much as we can, including meeting the needs of the students. So I'm just kind of tight.
Don't want to apologize
We
for
like
that.
that.
I
We
say.
like that.
Probably people behind me agreeing.
All of heads were going up and down.
This, I think it's important for us not to just live right today, but we've got a plan for next year. We don't know what's going on legislative, especially as it relates to our teacher salaries and what's going to be paid, what isn't, unfunded mandates such as with safe schools. Don't mean to pick on safe schools, but it seems like the requirements are getting more and more, and we want to meet those requirements because they're tying things to them that we've never had tied to them in terms of funding and people's jobs, things like that. So adult ed, they budgeted $8.2 million, and they've amended it just a little bit. So that's just slight amendment. They've collected revenues, about 53% of their revenues have been collected. So 47% federal, 52% state, 55 local. Their local is basically fees for those classes. Their budgeted expenditures are right about where the original budget is right now, so there wasn't much change. And you can see all of the adult ed information on handout 3, if you're interested in the detail right now. So let's look and see what they've spent. Pretty much everything is between 32 to 51%, with the exception of capital. And I asked Ms. Gary, I said, so what's happened with capital? And she explained those were expenditures associated with the CDL program. So that makes sense, that a lot of their capital was associated with that program. It's up and running, so 81% of that budget being spent makes sense.
Tortoises.
Pardon me?
Go for tortoises, don't.
Yes, go for tortoises and the like. Those are those things we don't anticipate that we. And again, their fund balance does not have a requirement on it, but we are a little concerned, and we have met with, Gary has met with Mr. Kelly, and they have a plan to make sure that they don't exceed, their expenses don't exceed their budget. Let's talk about referendum. And again, all the detail of referendum can be found on handout number 4, but we budgeted $20.1 million. We've collected $7.6 million. That's about 38%, and that's good, because remember, we start collections in November.
Right.
Does it start July 1, it starts November. So we're right in line with the collections. This is a little bit different for you. We're showing your budgeted expenditures by program. So you can see that class size, 11.2 million. So 52% of the entire budget is class size, and that is teachers and paraprofessionals. And then the other programs as listed. The new one this year, of course, is school safety, $1.2 million. I did want to bring to your attention that we have 467 staff budgeted in referendum. And that's important for us to keep in mind, since this has a finite end to it.
So,
Like I said, we gotta start making.
so with 467 staff members, if this sunsets, the referendum sunset, what happens to the staff members? We have to absorb them, or
We need to
we
really
need to be looking
start
at?
thinking about that. I mean,
Yeah,
because we can't sit and,
and wait,
yeah.
and just anticipate that it's going to roll over again.
Right.
We
We
don't know that it will.
Right.
Right, and we need to look to ensuring that the classrooms have what they need first.
Right.
That's that. And that we have to be able to afford that out of money that we know is going to be coming back to us year after year. If we can get our classrooms funded and our transportation in good shape with plenty of drivers, the rest of it, a lot of it, will become smoother.
Ms. Boston Ellis, could you spend a minute talking about recurring costs? And with the 467 folks that are funded out of referendum and their raises and,
Right. So because we have 467 staff budgeted in this particular fund, their costs go up every year due to raises and benefits, just like
Yep.
anyone else is funded out of the general fund.
Right.
So it's important that we have to be very careful about adding additional units and ensuring that we have the maximum that is needed in the classroom, but that we, stick to the plan. We've had a lot of additional units added from the beginning of the referendum due to needs But we just need to be careful about that because this grows every year, and it grows in excess of what we're generating in revenue.
Although not meeting class size comes with its own hazards and penalties. And the other thing that's on my mind is school safety. I can just hear it now. Well, you have referendum dollars to pay for that. Well, we're not sure if we're always going to have referendum dollars to pay for that. So again, that's something we need to continue to make the case at the state and probably the federal level too, that we've got to get sustained and consistent support for school safety. I mean,
Financial support.
correct.
Because the demands are growing. Right now, we are covering the expenditures that are not in the general fund. We're covering them out of referendum. And then also there is some equipment that is included in that $1 million, $1.2 million. And as I stated before, these costs are going to increase, but the revenue is not increasing as fast as the costs are increasing.
So with the school safety, once we have the infrastructure in place, which is very costly to put into place, will we still see an increase, you think, in school safety expenses? Or will we eventually level off a little bit with that? Because to do what they're requiring us to do for infrastructure is incredibly expensive. So once that's in place, do we kind of level off a little bit?
Well, some of the things that we're putting in place are recurring costs.
Right.
So how long is a camera going to last?
Right.
We're going to have to replace cameras.
Right.
There's other things that, we won't have to replace fencing as much as we would these other types of equipment, such as cameras.
And-
So we have to keep that in mind. Technology reminds me all the time, okay, what happens when these cameras need to be replaced? Who's going to pick up that cost? Is that going to be a cost that is shifted to the general fund? But they just want to keep that in forefront.
And with
Hopefully
the-
they'll be
with-
like flat screen TVs.
And with
get-
the school safety thing, we see that because it's evolving every year, we're getting more and more mandates, unfunded mandates. And so I kind of anticipate that it's going to maybe slow down, but I don't think it's going to ever level off because even the cost, our SROs and those people are paid out of the referendum.
We have a 3-year
We have a 3-year contract currently, but in 3 years, those costs could go up again. So we just got something where even our hourly rate for officers and stuff, it just went up. So we're going to have to anticipate and try to make some hard decisions on how we're going to do this.
I still believe that this community would pass a 1-year, 1 cent referendum sales tax, because sales tax can only be spent on capital expenditures, to get these schools fenced, get what we need, get the safety stuff, and it sunsets in 1 year. What would we get, about $40 million?
I think that was the last number I gave you. I
1 year
believe from-
sales tax. I do believe this community would support that. It sunsets in 1 year, and it is spent strictly on the capital expenditures to secure these schools.
If that's the case, then that would be something that we would have to be very exact in our language on what it's going to be used for.
Oh, of course. I mean, that,
And-
exactly.
And
But I'm telling you.
it's not for SRO salaries, it has to be
No,
for
it's, you can't.
infrastructure.
You
and
can't
all
spend
that.
sales tax on salary. It has to be capital expenditures.
Right.
And if we put together an expense tab with operations, exactly what to complete our fencing, to get our cameras, to do what we need to do, just see how much it is. I do believe this community would support that one-time sales tax for 1 year, and it sunsets in a year.
On Tuesday, we had a visit to the principal meeting. We had a visit from Damian Kelly, who's the director at the state level for Safe Schools, school safety. And he brought with him Tracy Sampson, who is a regional person. Much like we have our area directors, they've divided the state into regions. to have more direct contact with us, and Tracy Sampson is our person. And she stayed to have a meeting with us after. So she met with me and Mr. McFadden, Mr. McGowan, Amanda Steckman, and we were talking about school safety and all of that. And she said that the emphasis at the state level, she sees it migrating from hardening of schools to mental health. And so with that, that's going to be reoccurring costs, because it's going to be putting those mental health counselors in and all of that. So she said that will be the trend that we're going to start seeing.
Thank you. So that's a discussion for another time
Yes.
on how do we,
How do we get this going?
But if we go ahead and ask for the information, it can't hurt. So we know how much we need.
Yeah.
Because right now, I'm not real sure if who knows that number.
Well, you're asking for it now.
I'm looking at you saying, please ask them for that.
Your mouth worked just like mine.
Okay.
You're asking.
Could you, do I have consensus that y'all want this
We
information?
want to know, we want the information.
I don't mind getting the information.
Patton is here.
Okay,
He said amen. He didn't say it.
to harden our schools, because it has to be spent on capital dollars, and if somebody will just get me the number, what we need, I'd appreciate it, thank you.
And I don't mind getting the information. I think it's good to have, any information is good information for us for decision-making. What I keep thinking about, and I agree, this is a very giving community. You know, they have renewed our funding referendum for a second time. Our Public Ed Foundation is bringing in a lot of money. Every 2 weeks, we talk about and thank so many different businesses and private folks in the area. And at the same time, I think we also need to keep in our front mirror that we are 46th in funding out of 50 states. So to go back to the community once again and ask for more money, that's something I would need to think hard about, but I would love to have the information. Information is power.
So, Ms. Stacy has requested so we can get it in
do
on a
it.
work session.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Stacy. Appreciate that.
So we'll look at actual expenditures for the referendum, about 37%, which is typical of this fund. You'll notice that professional development hasn't spent much, but they do a lot of training for our first-year teachers, the end of May, the month of June and July. So that's why that one's pretty much out of line from the other ones. Our projected ending fund balance is $2.9 million. The original budget was 3.1. It was amended down to include those positions that you requested be added back in the referendum. So it's been reduced a little bit. What is important about the fund balance in referendum is that we use those funds to operate the program until we start receiving our tax dollars. So it is important that we maintain a very healthy fund balance.
Right.
We got to November living off the fund balance from the prior year, and then I believe it was November, we were right there. So
Right.
we just need to keep that in mind as well.
But that fund balance carries us for several months
Yes, sir.
till we
So
actually
how
get
many months
funding.
how many months do we not get the referendum dollars?
We start getting them in November, so it
That's
would be
like 5
July through October.
Okay.
And we receive, based on when folks pay their taxes,
Okay.
we receive through November through June.
Okay.
So 5 months, we're basically on fund balance.
Yes.
Yeah. That's something that the community definitely needs to hear and understand, you know. This flow of funding always seems like it, yes, it's cash flow.
Yes. That's right, Alice, right? Cash flow.
Flow issue.
It keeps me up to date on that. So our budget challenges you're well aware of, using unassigned fund balance. Our fluctuation in enrollment, we got a surprise in October. We've leveled out in February, hopefully. The impact of the choice scholarships that we talked about, the family empowerment, increase in fixed costs. Right now, we're holding steady with fuel and utilities, but it seems like the summer months, the spring, those kind of expenditures start kind of spiking a little bit. And so we increase our budget based on the prior year, so we just have to keep that in mind. Also, the unfunded mandates that you've discussed previously, especially as it relates to school safety. Then a cost associated with aging buildings. I mean, Robert is constantly bringing to your attention, there's some chillers being, I think, replaced or repaired at Forest right now. They were not in the budget. They were not planned. So it's those kinds of things because we have old schools. And because of that, we have about 54 million in unfunded needs in the capital project. 5-year plan. So if you'll go to handout 5, we can talk a little bit more about the third calc, which we received. Again, that is associated with our actual FTE for the month of October, because remember, they measure us at October and February, and an estimate of where we think we'll be in February. So the second calc is the original budget, and we're just talking about the general fund operating. So again, it's showing an increase in that budget of $6.5 million, and we had to reduce it for McKay and the family empowerment, and of course, I mentioned the prior period adjustment. So it is projected that we will receive $1.8 million in additional revenue for this year if the projections line up. And what does that do to? Again, I went back to Ms. Gary and said, what makes up this $1.8 million? And that is basically tied to the work that Dr. Alves and her staff have done, looking at our ESE population and lest I speak out of terms, reevaluating their IEPs, providing the services they need and documenting them. So these students that were in basic ESE, the programs 111, 112, and 13 have now been shifted to 254s and 255s. What that means is their weight is higher, therefore they generate money,
Lot more money.
additional funds.
And most importantly, though, they're getting the services
services they
they've
need.
always
Getting-
needed and deserved.
Right, the services are there. What is good about that is that our ESE programs, our exceptional programs, always cost way more than what we're earning. So to have the students aligned in the right program that they should be in will allow us to provide the services that they need. So, in case someone thinks, oh, they have $2 million, it's really associated with ESE costs, and we look forward to a full year of this in the February account, and hopefully next year our funding will be greater because we're providing these services, and then we can actually afford to do more for our population of students that require additional services.
So that's why it's so important that these ESC kids get the proper screenings immediately so they can get the right services. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Boston.
Ms. Boston Ellis, before you run away, do you have any suggestions, or maybe there could be a committee, or not a committee, but some food for thought, is the aging buildings, because that is a concern. Because actually, I was even driving around this week, and if you look, you're like, that building is aging. And I'm thinking ahead, and I mean, we know of Lake Weir and stuff, but maybe we could also think about what we could do to be better prepared, because this is not going away. So I don't know what your thoughts are, if you want to think about it, or if you can come up with some suggestions, but we definitely need to
I think
consider.
Robert has a 5-year plan laid out of what we need to do.
Right, but how
for
do
funding,
we?
talk about the funding, how we would fund those things.
Yes, and that's what I want us to look at, like, because the money has to come from somewhere, but
Right.
we need to be thinking that way and preparing for that 5-year plan. So,
We
okay,
can do it.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank
Any-
you.
Appreciate the time.
Any
We
questions,
appreciate
Mayor?
you, and please
Thanks
tell
to
your team, thank
too,
you.
for all
Yes.
the
Yes.
work you
They
guys
rock.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
And hats off to the ESE department too for what they've been doing. And so many times teachers are providing those services just because it's the right thing to do, and they didn't always necessarily reflect on the matrix, It's just big-hearted teachers doing great things for kids every single day, and now it's being credited on the financial side, and that's obviously very important.
That documentation.
You bet.
Dollars, doesn't it?
You bet.
Yes.
D
Proper
equals D.
documentation. Proper documentation.
Yes.
Right.
Any other comments from the board? Any, just,
Would
any?
like to second
Yes,
what
ma'am. I'm sorry.
everyone's saying about Dr. Alves and how hard she's worked to try to make all this work. And sometimes we try things that might not work the way it looked on paper, but I always say the travesty is not that we maybe did something that maybe we need to do a little different, but that when we look at what we're doing and it's not working, that we don't quickly readjust. And thank you, Dr. Alves. I know you've been up to your eyeballs in alligators.
Things take time.
Thank you. Any public comment? Being none, Mr. Harris, review of charter school renewal application in Macintosh.
All right, good morning, Pastor Chair, Madam Co-Chair, board members, Dr. Mayor, Mr. Prespino, Ms. Green. I'm here today to go over a couple things, but the first thing is the review of the charter school renewal application for Marion Charter School. You should find that in your board packet, their actual application that they submitted. Just a brief history. The original contract was approved in June 13th, 2000 for Marion Charter for a 5-year, and then was subsequently renewed in 2005, 2010, and 2015. Their current charter contract is expiring in May this year, and so they submitted a renewal application. And then if renewed contract, if the board approves it, it will be in effect from June 20 to June 2025. Again, there's a little statutory history for that, for them to reapply for their thing, and then a review process to go place, and that goes over their application. And the district, we have a team of people that go over their renewal application that includes facilities, curriculum, finance, staffing, all the things, and there is a standard rubric that the state provides that we have to follow, that we go with that, and that rubric is attached to their application. And our district review, they meet all their criteria, and so they do meet their criteria for renewal. I did meet with Ms. Axum the other day as we did our walkthrough, and they're doing some great things at Marion Charter. The best news that she has is, she mentioned in her presentation that they are mortgage-free. They've paid off all their land and their building, and I actually was able to meet with their construction person that they're going to start building their new buildings.
That's good.
And so they're really excited about that. And so the recommendation from our team is that they get renewed. Y'all have the application in your packet. Review that, review the things. It will be on the board agenda. I believe it's on the 24th or 5th board meeting is when you approve that. And when you approve that, then we can start the contract negotiations. Are there any questions on Marion Charter's contract renewal?
Mr. Harris,
Yes,
what do you think, I'm asking for your opinion, has been one of the reasons that they've been successful as a charter school?
I think the main reason is their plan that they've had in place. They haven't expanded greatly. They did it in increments, and they had a plan every time that they've expanded and grew, and they have quality teachers, and they have a quality program, and so the parents want to go there. They stay fully enrolled, and so they don't overextend themselves. They do the process, and they, as Teresa would say, they have a fiscal plan and they stick with it. They don't go above and beyond, and so that's what's made them to be able to pay off. And being financially solvent is just as important as being academically
Correct.
solvent, and they're scoring high on both sides.
And how's your interaction with their board?
Very good. I mean, anytime I don't interact with them on a large basis. I usually deal with Ms. Axum, the principal, but anytime I've had any questions, they've immediately responded. They've reached out with me with questions, and so it's a good relationship.
Thank you.
And I think it's to have a successful charter school and to have it work for everyone, you've made a big difference. Thank you. Since you've taken over the program.
Thank you. What's a joy? I mean, because they're our kids, and so it's all about the kids.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Any public comment?
Okay. I have two things because also today, Ms. Roach from Macintosh is here to do her presentation.
Okay.
That was when she was ill, when they did it before. But two things. Number one, in your box, we did receive a new charter application for that process. We do have a review process that started on that. I sent you the electronic copy, and saying we have 90 days from Friday to approve or deny. And that process has started. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to call me individually, and I can talk to you about the contract. I've gone over the contract twice already, or the application twice already. I have a good relationship with their committee that put it together, and they've been good with us from the beginning about starting that and having meetings and asking about things and wanting to do things the right way. And so they're very professional to work with. And so if you have any questions about either the application or the review process, please reach out with me individually.
And they raved about you as well when I met with them. So thank you again to tag along with what Ms. Stacy said. Thank you for that, because you were a great help to them, very professional.
Thank you. The second thing before I bring up Ms. Roach is our school choice windows, because that's also what I do, closed last Friday. And we had over 800 more students this year apply for a choice program than did last year. And a lot of that has to do with our schools are getting better, doing a lot better with recruiting. The system that we have in place is a lot more parent-friendly to do that. Our traditional charter schools, are not charter, our magnet programs, their applications aren't at the level they used to be, but our other magnet schools, their applications are increasing. Because like I've always said since the beginning, my goal is to have a quality program at every school. So you don't have to leave your neighborhood school because it's a bad school, but if you left it because it's a choice program that you go.
Right.
And so, and that process is working. We just said small steps, and it's progress, and it is working. So we're excited. The lottery will be run, and notifications will go out. We're hoping the third week in February that the parents will be notified of those, and all students should be placed by spring break.
Awesome.
I commended you I had a conversation with you the other day and told you I commended you on that charter school, the choice, because my family, my son is going through that same thing, and it was very easy to navigate. So I appreciate that.
Good.
I'm sure others do as well.
Yes, they do, and it's a good, I mean, there's always, a process, but my staff has been very good at helping navigate people through it, and so we're good. All right, we're going to bring up Miss Jennifer Roach. She is the principal, the new principal to Macintosh Area Charter School, to give her presentation. You have the documents in front of you, which is her template that she filled out. Also, you have her audit from last year. Just a reminder that Macintosh is under financial corrective action based upon their audit. They did submit a plan that was approved by the school district. We sent it up to the state, and they approved their financial corrective action plan. And so you have that documentation that's here. So after that, I'm going to introduce you to Ms. Roach.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Roach. Just since I haven't met you, I'll give you a little brief introduction of where I come from. So I've been in Clay County as an educator for almost 20 years. While there, I've been a school and district administrator since 2008. I was principal at an elementary school of 1,500 students. From the principalship, I went into district administration where I was supervisor of instructional personnel. And then I left. I had the opportunity to kind of be a stay-at-home grandma type thing for a little while, and very, very bored, and I had the opportunity to move into Alachua as an ESE consultant, where I did some very part-time ESE consultant work. Through a friend of a friend, found out about this job and said, hey, would you want to take on a charter school? And I thought, I did a 1,500 kid school, I can do a 70 kid school, and it's almost been as much work. But here I am. So, as he said, our cap has been accepted and approved by the states. I've been here since like the very last day of October. I think I came in on October 30th, which was fun to come to an elementary school the day before Halloween. But I did. And since I've been there, I've seen that the board, and I mean, I've strived as well myself, but the board has been very compliant with what, is in the cap, and it's been very well monitored at board meetings and things like that, and everything that's in place. I didn't have a part in developing or participating in the creation of the cap, but I will say that it appears to be very compliant from what I've seen. There have been some pieces of the finances that have changed since I've been there. For example, as you all know, a school budget and school finance is very different than any budget or finance. So I've taken over all of the finances at the school. So there's not a secretary handling that anymore, so I'm handling that myself. So I do have more of a direct, that more than a bird's eye view. I have a very specific, direct view on that. And there's work to be done, but I do feel like that we are moving in the right direction. As of this moment, we have in our current account, as I have on my template, we sit between high 30s and low 40s. Not worried about paying bills, those kind of things. I'd like to see that, to be a higher amount. But it does seem to be in a healthy place for the size school that we are. Teeny tiny. So we do have right at 74 students right now. That fluctuates day to day. We have 9 employees. I am the principal, the vice principal, the guidance counselor, and the lunch lady. I literally serve plates every day at 11 o'clock. So it's a little busy. Moving on to student achievement information. That, to me, appears to be some low-hanging fruit. When you have a population that size, it should be very easy to fix. The district I came from, and I'm sure Marion is no different, we were very well trained in triangulating data with our teachers and kind of just seeing where you can get the most bang for your buck with which actions, academically. And so I've been working with my teachers to help them to learn that, because I feel like they've been lacking in the PD area. Specific PD, I think they're getting abroad. They're signing up for the things that Marion offers and those kind of things. But as far as someone sitting with them and looking at exactly what their kids need, I think that's kind of been glazed over. So that's been a focus. I have one day a month that I work one-on-one with each teacher, and we focus on their student data and specific things that relate directly to the needs of their students. In writing, for example, our proficiency last year was only 27%. So I've purchased the Top Score Writing Program, the boot camp, because we were on such a short time frame between now and testing, and departmentalized the third, fourth, and fifth grade, so that all the students are going to one teacher for that. So I can really hone in on that one teacher and make sure she's doing it. And I've been working directly with the author of that program. I think Marion uses Top Score Writing as well, but I've been working directly with that author, and she's created a program extremely tailored to our school and our needs. And so I'm hoping to see a lot of lift there. I also purchased iReady, which we have not had. They had in years past, but I purchased it, and we began using that in January. Again, just for third, fourth, and fifth grade at this time for financial reasons, and hopefully next year for everybody. But we purchased the toolkit with that, the teacher toolkit, and I've met with the teachers and provided training on how to best use that, because when they've used it in the past, I'm not sure it was used adequately or in a way that did, that was the most effective for the students' needs. So that's been a big focus. So there's been a whole lot of change, a whole lot of, cheese moved and that kind of thing since I've been there. I will say our board and our teachers have been 100%, I could not have asked for more as far as them being receptive and supportive. And I know that's not always the case when you bring change. A lot of times it's met with a lot of resistance, and that's the bigger hill to climb than the change itself, is to convince some people to change with you. And I've not had that problem at all. They've been extremely, extremely willing to go in and do what needs to be done, and they recognize the need, and they're not in a state of denial of, things are great, we're doing well. And, the district I came from, we were number 6 in the state, and so I know what I'm doing, and if I can do it for 1,500, I can do it for 70. I just need them behind me, and I feel like I've really been blessed by having a faculty that does follow. And not to leave out, our students have also jumped in, because it's a big change on kids. I've moved teachers, like I said, I've departmentalized things that weren't. I've changed schedules, implemented things that weren't in place before, that they've never had to do before. And in some ways, it doesn't make sense why a class of 9 students has to do it this way, but we do. And the students have jumped in, and the parents and everybody. We've met very little resistance. Our goals for our FSA reading, math, and writing scores, I was very, because of the time, I only listed as a 5% increase as our goal. My goal is obviously much greater than that, but I also don't want to set myself up to fail the first year. So coming back next year, we should have much, much greater returns if we continue with the same stride. And then it just goes right into talking about things that have been done specifically. I think I've kind of addressed that, broadly. Our science scores also need a lift. We've purchased the science feedbacks, which we've used in my former district, and I think I saw that somewhere as well, that Marion uses those. But I think that I've addressed all the other areas, math, reading, science, and writing, what we've been doing specifically. And then the only last thing that I would mention that we've implemented, as of late, is that I meet biweekly with every student, which is not that great of a feat when we only have 70 students, but it sounds like I'm meeting, gosh, that must be all you do, right? But it's not. So I meet every other week with my students and talk about their data specifically and help them with their goals. They don't have a data folder, so we'll go through and talk about, what goals we've established for them and what they're doing to meet those goals. And I have the students, when they come through the lunch line, very often they'll initiate that conversation themselves and tell me what they're doing and what they've seen on on their own, on their own progress, even though it's not time for us to meet yet. So the students are really taking an ownership of that. So it's through the teachers and the students and just the positive support that it's received. I think that we're headed in the right direction. So are there any questions that I can answer for anybody?
No, thank
Okay.
you, my
All right.
goodness. I'm very impressed with what you're doing, so.
Well, thank you.
We'll look forward
you.
to great things coming.
I appreciate it. I'll also add that Mr. Ayers and Ms. Posada and so Ms. Cox, so many people have been such a resource because I know public school, I don't know charter schools, I'll be totally honest, and so I've had to ask them really dumb questions, and they've never treated me like I'm asking dumb questions, and they've been so wonderful, so I appreciate all of their support, and it's nice to get to meet all of you all finally.
Yes, yes. You surely aren't letting any grass grow under your feet, ma'am.
No, I was like, you definitely have a pulse on that school
Yeah.
already. And it's very evident, and
hope so.
Right,
Yeah,
to be
I
commended.
think you do. And it sounds like you also have like relationships too with your teachers to have them follow you, and you just said so much. So I think in a year we're going to
We're
be.
gonna see.
I know so. Yeah, that's
Excited for you.
awesome.
And you're getting all the support you need from elementary ed and all of that?
Anybody I need
Okay.
support from. I go through Mr. Ayers generally, he kind of facilitates it because I don't have the contacts that I'm used to having. Haven't been in the same district for 20 years. It's just like, I'll call so-and-so, I'll call so-and-so. So that's been a challenge, but that's just a learning curve, I think, anywhere. But Mr. Ayers is great at routing it in the right direction, and it's been fantastic. So I appreciate it very much.
Good, good.
Any other comments, guys? Any public comment?
Energizer Bunny.
Being none. Ms. Dobbins, staffing plan 1 of 3.
Good morning, Reverend Chair, Madam Vice
Morning.
Chair, board members, Madam Superintendent, Mrs. Prestivian, and Attorney Green. Well, we are kicking off the 2021 season. You should have before you a paper clipped, you have a timeline, you have a manila folder and a red folder, and those are going to be the documents we go through. You should also have in your drawer from previous staffing plans an orange ruler. I have 2 extra if you need one, because as you can see, these are very small print documents. I'm going to first talk about the tentative hiring timeline. It is tentative because it hinges on a lot of moving parts. However, I just want to bring your attention to what's bold and blue for you. Today is February 6th, and we are here to talk about the summer school staffing plan coming up this summer, and also the school staffing plan for the next school year. I will give you the overview. I will give you all the information to present for you to start going through this packet, and then hopefully between the 6th and February 20th is our next work session, so we do have another one, to bring back any information you're seeking. And in between that time, I highly encourage you to reach out to myself or the directors of those programs to answer questions. So when we come back on the 20th, we're fully prepared to give you everything you need to make an informed decision. Because we turn around on February 25th seeking your approval of the summer school and the school staffing plan. So 2 work sessions, the time in between to answer questions. Hopefully we can come to an agreement on the 25th and bring you the recommendations you're seeking. From there, we turn around and go through the process to get to the April 4th. I just want to bring your attention to that date. That is our job fair. So the whole purpose of this timeline is to structure this district to get to that April 4th so we can be fresh out of the gate before other districts offering teaching positions on full contract, not contingent contracts. So our schools are getting the best applicants before other districts too. So that is also why we're sitting in February talking about these things. Again, it all ties in together. Any questions on the hiring timeline? The first staffing plan we're going to go through is your manila folder. You're going to have 3 documents within this folder. This is the summer school staffing plan. The first document will just simply give you a comparison of the 2019 last summer school and this upcoming summer school. I will tell you there is a difference of 97 units, a minus 97, so Teresa should be happy to hear that part. It is a minus 97, but in the past summer school staffing plans, we've had a lot of float units, what we called reserve units, because we never know what to expect in the summer. How many third grade retention students are we going to have? How many ESY, which are ESE students, are we going to have? And our directors and district staff members have really this year looked at a 5-year historical trend, and we have tried to narrow that down so we're not bringing you an overinflated recommendation.
That's great.
So that is your comparison. The wash is minus 97 overall.
Can I ask a quick question?
It's a good trend to look at.
Just about the minus 97, I'm thinking about the meetings that we had as far as retaining students, and that this year, our criteria sounds like it's been being strengthened. Are we anticipating that more students may be retained this year as a result? And if so, how's that going to affect this 97?
I'm going to ask Ms. Beck to address that specifically.
All right, good morning, board members. So this summer, per state statute, we will be offering summer reading remediation to our third grade students that for all intents and purposes are retained, that they did not promote for cause. We do anticipate that we will have some larger numbers of students in K1 or 2 that may be retained. We continue to work with our administrators on getting that messaging to our teachers. We're right in the process of doing that. And so our teachers will continue to work with students, but we will not be offering specific summer programming attached to that. Now, some of those students may end up being invited to other programs, such as 21st Century or school-specific programming that is funded through grant dollars and whatnot. So, but using our reading dollars, we go for those third grade retention students and really looking at, can we start to continue to work to close the gap on them?
So when you said larger numbers, we're not anticipating that we're going to have a large number of K-1-2 retainees, but we will see numbers larger than before because of the communication with teachers, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, I just don't want anybody panicking.
Well, the best way, though, to keep people from panicking is to tell the public that we do have some new guidelines. And so that, unless we just want to shock the parents, because the parents, they've got kids that have gone through our system, maybe 5 kids, and it's been, oh, well, I know he's going to pass because my other student wasn't doing his work and he passed, and so it's going to be some surprises this year on the parent side. Because I would expect our retainage to step up enough to where we're at least in somehow not like the lowest retainage district in the state like we have been the last few years. And I know it does affect our learning gains. I know if we retain these second graders and they don't move on, it affects our learning gains in third grade because I understand how the game works completely. So I know it's kind of scary that we've depended on third grade repeat testers and on into fourth and fifth on learning gains for our third grade retainage, which I believe is probably why we have been doing social promotion for a number of years. But this is the time parents need to know. If I have to do a letter to the editor, I'll do a letter to the editor, let the parents know. But it'd be nice if y'all would let the public know that we do have some new guidelines, because I have a way of letting the public know, but I think it should come from the district administration.
Well, I believe that probably through this process, the parents should be a big part
Exactly.
of those students. And so
Absolutely.
they're probably going to know prior to the end of the school year that their student will be retained.
So
Absolutely.
can you share the email that we sent twice?
So I think our biggest advocates in this will be our teachers, because they have direct contact with those families and parents on a daily, weekly basis. They do a great job in communication. And as a part of the plan that we laid out for considering possible retention, there is a requirement that our teachers are meeting with families and that they're documenting that and talking about deficiencies and ways that the school will will continue to close the gap of then what families can do at home as well. In addition to that, we've had for a number of years, and that will not change, that with third quarter report card, we'll be sending out possible retention notification. It's a form letter, it's got district letterhead on it, and there's parent signature on the bottom, and we retain that copy to demonstrate that those families, specific families, have been communicated with along the way. So there absolutely should and will not be any surprises at the end of the
Right,
year.
I'd love for you to forward me the emails or highlight, maybe I got the emails and didn't even know what I was looking at, that went to the teachers to let them know about the new plan and what's going on. I'd love to see those emails.
So what we did was at the January principal and assistant principal meeting, we had the opportunity, it was a great meeting. So we rolled out not only the student progression plan, but the new data collection form. And then our administrators are meeting, again, I think it's more powerful when it's coming from our administrators. They are currently meeting with their primary teachers, K-1, 2, and we've asked them to have those meetings complete by February 14th.
So when did you have that principal meeting?
So that was, I'd have to look back at
Because
the.
I've had 4 teachers call me and they've not been told anything about it. And
So
that's just
again-
people who know me.
So our
Well-
administrators have to that February 14th.
We need to make sure that we get that information out there, and then, but please make sure you get that to Ms. Stacy as she's requesting.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for clarifying my question about the summer school staffing plan and how that relates to this retention topic. And it would certainly be, my hope that kids that do end up being retained will end up participating in some program that's going to help them at least not lose any skills over the summer, if not increase their skills. But that sounds like that's outside of what this is. So thanks for that clarification. I appreciate
We'll
it.
have the media centers open again this summer with
That's great.
special
Ms.
programs.
Dobbins, I appreciate you all looking at the 5-year historical data
Yeah.
because help you make really good decisions about this, so thank you.
Absolutely. And just to re-clarify, I do know a lot of our schools are using their Title I funds, their TESA funds, and they are targeting specific students on their campus, but that's unrelated to our district summer offerings.
Okay, good. Thanks.
So you have 2 sheets. One has yellow, and it'll say instructional units, and the second sheet will say non-instructional, and it's in pink. So your teachers and then your non-instructional. I'm going to first refer to the one highlighted in yellow, which is instructional, and orient you to the document. We're not going to go line by line because I know that you'll spend some time digesting and perusing these documents. I want to point out, if you see on the left-hand side where it says schools, you'll see down that column which schools and which departments are involved in summer school programs that are offered district-wide. And then as you go to the right, next to schools, you'll see the summer school programs that we offer. So the first 4 columns all list ESE. The first 3 say ESE, and then the next one is our pre-K. You can see how those units are assigned out by school and where those summer programs are located. You'll see a resource officer. That is for Camp K. That's our Kiwanis camp, ran by Scott Mitchell, who does a phenomenal job. And then as you go from right to left, you'll see VPK, you'll see what we're offering at high schools, middle schools, driver's ed. You'll see our 3rd grade reading camp in there. And then to the far right, 3rd to the last, you'll see where we also have our media centers that will be open that Dr. Mayer has spoken. Well, we did add 1 media center, and that was Jones, because we are going through some changes at Jones as well, which you're well aware of. So that'll be open to the community as well. The next page, non-instructional. These are all the support staff that will be working to support those summer school programs. Again, you'll see how they're assigned down the left side under schools. And as you go from schools from right to left, from left to right, you'll see what those units are, the behavior techs, the special needs paras, all the way over to the VPK paras as well, and then how those are assigned out. So that is your summer school staffing plan in a nutshell. So you'll have time between now and the days to come between the February 20th work session. I do highly encourage you, as you peruse this, If you have questions, please contact me or please contact the director of the program, which I'm able to assist you with the name of that, just so we can be ready on February 20th, so the district can be ready to bring you any more information you may wish to have before you make a decision on the 25th. Is there any questions or anything you would already know that you'd like me to bring back?
Thank you.
I like seeing that there are behavior techs that are scheduled to work in the summer. That has not always been the case, and it would be great if behaviors dissipated in the summer, but typically they don't, and they need support, so that's great to see that in the plan.
All right, moving to your red folder. This is your 2021 school staffing plan. I separated it out this year because the bulk of what we're going to discuss is that small three-piece paper, the very first one stapled. And that is the summary of the thick paper clipped. So the thick paper clip, which I'm not going to go over, is the assignment of all of these units. This is the summary, and where these are where they're assigned out to schools and departments and so forth. So I'd like to start with the 3-page small document and start going over the changes to the school level staffing plan. And I'm going to start backwards and work my way up. But before I even do that, I want you to understand that all of the directors sitting in the audience have all been involved in constructing this staffing plan. I know our area directors work intimately with the principals. They had a preview of their staffing plan, and then it's been tweaked and modified to what we as a district has proposed for that school. They will see the final copy once you board approve it, but of course all of these documents are public record. If you look at the very bottom, the very first sheet is going to be your instructional units, your support units, and your administration units that are assigned to schools. You'll see that there is an addition of 48 units overall. And before I get into the weeds of where those are, that 48, 35 of those are to support ESE. So of the 48, we have 35 new units for ESE. And if you recall, thank you, Ms. Boston Ellis, talked about us increasing our funds through changing our matrices for ESE students. That has allowed us to bring back an increase in ESE instructional units, and we have a support plan and that we're also going to be requesting. The other units, all but one of them are teacher units, and I'll go over those specifically. So the changes are very minimum, but the changes are school-based. They're all instructional-based, are ESE-based. So now I'm going to move to the top, and you'll see on the left-hand column, basic academic. These are our classroom teachers, and if you look under subtotal, out of all of our schools and programs, we are adding right now an overall of 13 instructional teaching units. And again, those are scattered throughout that larger document in the back, but we're adding 13 instructional units. The next section, alternative programs, you can see we've added 2. We've added 2 more units to our Marion virtual. That is Mr. Paul Vowinkle, who does an extraordinary job. That school has completed, in the 18-19 school year, students have completed over 6,000 courses through Marion Virtual. So they are greatly increasing in programs and in courses, and so they needed 2 more teaching units, and that is added under that section. The next section, applied technology. You can see that there are no changes in applied technology. This is a lot of our vocational and career academies. ESE, I'm going to come back to because that is the bulk of our conversation today. So please go past the ESE program and skip down to enrichment. Enrichment are going to be your art, your band, your driver's ed, your ESOL, your ADVIT, PE, reading remediation, and ROTC. We are adding one. That one unit is a magnet teacher at Fort McCoy for the AVIT program. So they are highly trained in that AVIT program, which is a middle school initiative, and they will be the teacher for that AVIT program. So only one change in enrichment. Then we get into support. You'll see the third line, career ed facilitator. Mr. Villanella is in need of a career ed facilitator, so we are adding one more for the programs we offer under careers, our career academy. You'll see some minuses in there. You'll see that we actually have a total of a -1 overall, so the main addition there is that one CEF, and then we have two that have a minus. Under administration, you will see that there is a -2 because we are removing an AP position and a coordinator position. That AP was Loretta Young, who has left our district. So it is a vacant AP position that is removed.
Which school was that?
What,
Loretta Young did our CTE programs with Mr. Villanella.
okay.
So there's not going to be any help for him?
He has requested that the coordinator take over those roles. After looking at his entire plan, he felt like he could do it without an AP, and that was Mr. Villanella's initiative. Okay. So overall, we have 48. Again, that's going to be ESE, and that's going to be those teachers and the one CEF. So let's look at ESE. I think we've had a lot of conversation in this past year about our needs of our ESE students and that we have to provide stronger support. Dr. Albies and the area directors have looked at this very closely, and there are going to be some recommendations to help strengthen the programs that we offer to ESE students. If you look at line 2 under ESE programs and line 3, you can see that we're increasing our enrollment of ASD students, and we're needing to lower the numbers in our ASD students with autism units. So we are adding 5 units for students with autism.
And just a quick comment, it makes so much sense to have the kids on the spectrum that are able to access the gen ed curriculum, relatively easily in one class, and kids that, by no fault of their own, will always struggle to access any curriculum, not all mixed in together.
Correct. And as you know, we specialize those programs. So we have the gen ed, and then we have the modified curriculum, so they're not mixed. And that was very hard on teachers to try to do a gen ed and a modified curriculum at the same time.
how could you even do it?
Yes, absolutely. If you continue down, you'll see ESE specialist, and you're going to see plus 19, and that's a little bit of, well, it's just not clear. It's not that we're adding 19, we're actually adding an overall of 15. But here's what's happening, is we currently have 24 ESE specialists that are paid at an IDA. That means that those ESE specialists can only do IEP and ESE related tasks. Anything else would be supplanting funds. So we have a 504 issue. 504 is not a recognized program under IDA funds. You cannot use IDA funds to fund 504. 504 is getting almost as big as ESE. We have to do EPs, we have to do 504 plans, not EPs, that's gifted, sorry. We have to do 504 plans for all of those students, just like we have to do IEP plans for all of our ESE students. In the past, historically, because it wasn't a large number of students, those meetings historically were done by the AP and guidance counselors, but that's when you only had 1 or 2 in your school. Now we're looking at thousands across the district. So those, instead of putting that burden on the AP or the guidance counselor or the teacher, that meeting will be conducted by these ESE specialists. So that means that they cannot be funded 100% IDA, and that also means that we need more because they're taking on more. So you're going to see 20 under district fund, and if you flip to page 2 and you look under the grant, you'll see another 20. It's on the third chunk of information, instructional grants and categorical. 5 down, you're going to see another 20. So basically what we're going to have is we're going to have 40 ESE specialists. We are going to have them funded 50% IDA because half of their job is going to be doing the IEPs. And we're going to fund them 50% out of district because we cannot fund 504 out of IDA. And that ESE specialist now does all the 504 meetings and all of the IEP meetings. So it's not it's not on the plate of those teachers like it used to be.
So my one question is, and Dr. Alves, you may be able to answer this. Will this help move those 504 meetings and IEP meetings quicker?
Yes.
So that these kids can begin to get services quicker?
This will allow one person at the
Microphone.
school, this will allow one person at the school to be able to touch all of the meetings instead of having all these different people.
Okay.
It will allow them to be done on a schedule just like we do at any other school for any other IEP. So if they have an IEP and somebody comes in with an evaluation or they're ready to consider eligibility, then they will schedule that meeting and they will do it right there at their own school. They will not have to wait for someone else to come in and do that meeting.
So it should
So it
speed up
should
that
alleviate that.
process.
The other thing that Ms. Dobbins didn't touch on is by split funding these ESE specialists, we are going to be able to have a portion of their job be part of the Medicaid reimbursement program, which we have not been able to do in the past because you can't do Medicaid reimbursement when you are fully funded out of a federal grant. So it doesn't bring back all of their money, but we're not leaving money on the table any longer.
Thank you. Thank you.
You might as well stay close.
Because it really sounds like what's happening is you're streamlining the process, and the staff will have the opportunity to, if they're not already highly trained, to become highly trained, so when those matrices are filled out for the funding piece
They'll get it.
Yes.
You've obviously been listening to the teachers.
Oh, yeah.
All right, moving down the same column, you're going to come to inclusion. These are our inclusion teachers, our support facilitators. We have increased 2 across the board. I will tell you that was Marion Oaks and Romeo, where their numbers are ever increasing. This hopefully will be a category where each year we bring back and that number goes up, because our goal is to move students from self-contained into inclusion setting as appropriate. Continuing down, we are adding another IND unit, and then you'll see minus OI. OI used to be known as our physically impaired. Those are some of our most fragile medical students, and that population has decreased to where we could cut 1 unit. I'm going to have you look at the +6 under pre-K self-contained, and then if you scroll down, the very last one, pre-K ASD self-contained, for another 3. So that is a total of 9 pre-K units being added in. It is federal and state requirement that we must identify students early on for ESE services, and that's where our pre-K comes in. That's where Fiddlers, who sits in the northeast side of our district, and they reach out to multiple districts, they are the screeners that go into our community to determine whether someone will receive ESE services at the age of 3. That number has greatly spiked, and so the need to service those students has risen, and that's why you see the +9. 2 of those being specialized for pre-K students aged 3 to 5 coming in with autism spectrum disorder.
But money will follow that, so.
Money does follow. We do collect FTE for pre-K.
Well, and it goes right in line with, in 2018, 22% of the babies born were SEN babies, substance-exposed newborns, and it all lines up together.
Ma'am.
We're working on that.
Yes, Yes, ma'am.
So is this part of the Child Find program?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. So as I stated, fiddlers will identify and we must provide services. That is your ESE instructional, and this, again, whole front page is instructional units that are district funded. The whole front page is district funded. Any questions? Moving on to page 2. Page 2, we get into our support personnel. We only have 2 categories that are district funded. That's under the district support personnel. That's your behavior specialist and your program specialist. There are no changes to program specialist. We're not adding or subtracting any. However, if you see behavior specialist, you're going to see a 1.5. We're going to again get into the situation where we are providing services to bring back Medicaid funds. So currently, our behavior specialists are IDA funded, so we cannot receive Medicaid reimbursement if we're getting federal dollars for IDA. So what's going to happen is we are asking, if you scroll down to the district support personnel, you'll see behavior specialist IDA. We currently have 18. Our goal is to have 22. So we're increasing overall to 4 behavior specialists. Out of the 22, 6 of those behavior specialists will be funded 0.25 of their salary will be district funded, and then the 0.75 will be IDA funded. That 0.25 district funding allows us to submit Medicaid reimbursement claims, which will bring back not all, but some money. As Dr. Alvey says, it doesn't leave money on the table. So that is where you see the increase, because we're going to reach out and hopefully get that Medicaid reimbursement.
Does that .25 also facilitate them being able to work with gen ed kids that are having behavior issues, but that maybe with some support won't need an ESE label?
Yes, and if I could say it, the unit is a 1.5, because out of those 6, a 0.25 equals 1.5. Right. 1 point. You follow me?
What you said.
Yes, yes.
No, I don't, but I trust you.
6 units.
How about that?
6 unit funded at 0.25 times 6, you get the 1.5.
And the only reason that there's only 6 is you can only claim Medicaid reimbursement if they are board certified. So we have 6 who will be board certified this year. Medicaid only allows us to claim 2 hours of their workday to that. That's what that .25 is 2 hours of their workday. So that's why that decision was made. In the future, within the next 2 years, all of our behavior specialists will be board certified, and we will slowly increase the number that we're going to ask the district to pay for 2 hours of their salary, so we can recoup that Medicaid money, or even a small portion of the Medicaid money for those 2 hours.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
She's really good.
As you continue on, the bottom portion of page 2 is all grants funded and categorical, so that is no district dollars. There is an overall of 9.5. I'd like to point out that 9.5, which is at the very bottom, that 9.5 overall. However, we are adding, if the funds come through, so they will not be filled until we can guarantee the funding that supports it, which is FEFP, reading intervention. So this comes out of our elementary curriculum department, where we would like to have 11 highly specialized reading intervention, so we can push in the support to our L300 schools. We know we have a reading issue, and this is going to not streamline, this is going to intensify the support we're going to supply to those students identified for intervention in our L300 schools.
And where's that money, where are we looking to get?
FEFP, Ms. Beck, would you like to add more to this program? Not program positions? Thank you, ma'am.
So actually, I'm going to make one correction. We're actually looking at Title I dollars at this time. I'm working very, very closely with Ms. Boston, and if that is not possible, then I am going to look at our reading dollars. So beginning July 1st of this year, we have the requirement that all students that are identified as Tier 3 will require to have their reading remediation time being provided to them by a reading endorsed or certified teacher. So it is extremely important to us, as it is the state, to make sure that we have the very best people with the most qualifications sitting in front of our students that are substantially deficient. And so one of the primary purposes of this position would be working with students all day long that have been identified as being substantially deficient. That would look like on a rotating basis, by grade level, by classroom, and really targeting those students specifically. So Ms. Boston and I have been working very hard on this little vision that we have together, and we're trying to make it a reality. We think it could be a really strong benefit to this district. We're just trying to see how we can make this happen.
Yeah, that sounds great. Because at first when I saw that, I was like, is that a reading coach? And just a different name, but the way you described it sounds wonderful.
And that would be one of the things that if we are able to pull this off and we make that happen, those would be some of the pieces that we would be clarifying. We've already talked about that. That nope, this is not a reading coach position. This is not an administrative position. This is a person, I'll use that, boots on the ground in the classroom. I mean, every day working with students. That's the intention behind
Because
it.
kids that are struggling at that level, they need that one-on-one time.
Yes.
Just boom,
And,
boom.
and they need extra time, and they need small group time, and our folks are working really, really hard, but we see that as a clear need. There is, I mean, we can only get so small group based upon the personnel we have, and so again, this is a way to be responsive to our needs. So.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Once we have a determination of the funding source, whether it be FEFP or Title I or a combination, that will be on that line as well. As you see, everything else has their funding source tied to the title. That one does not, because we're still ironing out those. So that's the conclusion of page 2, and that is the conclusion of our instructional support and admin section of the school staffing plan. So moving on to the final page, page 3. Page 3 is going to give you all of our non-instructional, including IUPAT and MESP units that are for our school staffing plan. You're going to see the top section, non-instructional, clerical, and support. If I could draw your eye to the subtotal of 41, we are asking for 41 units. I will tell you that all of these units are either ESE special needs para, which we are asking for 24 of them to push support back into our ESE classrooms. And then we have 30 from the custodial department, because we are bringing back 4 schools off contract. So although it seems like a lot, we are actually not going to be paying for that contract for custodial services and bringing back Saddlewood, Sunrise, Legacy, and Westport to our own custodial department. So that's the increase in the custodians. And that's been a well-thought-out plan from the custodial department that they've been inching toward over the last several years. Question? Good? I'm not done. I just wanted custodians there. All right. So this is going to be one that you're really going to want to ponder because it's sensitive, and that's your behavior tech. So we have a behavior tech at every elementary school. We are requesting a -10 behavior tech because those 10 are at schools that have no specialized self-contained ESE classrooms. So we have found that those behavior techs are doing a lot of things unrelated to behavior. So, of course, we're not going to minus something without having a plan to support those 10 schools. As you saw earlier, we are increasing our paras in classrooms, so we have more support individually into those classrooms. We are also increasing the behavior team. When I say behavior team, you have 2 behavior analysts. We're at 3 behavior analysts. You have we're asking for 22 behavior specialists. We will have 21 behavior techs in the schools, and those are at elementary schools that have self-contained specialized units. And then we have another 9 IDA-funded behavior techs that the district assigns out based on priority needs. So if a student is in crisis, that's where, even if that school has a behavior tech, they're in crisis, the district can send one of those 9 out to that school to support that one-on-one. If one of these 10 schools have a crisis, then one of those 9 behavior techs, if they're not available, then one of the 3 behavior analysts or one of the 22 behavior specialists are on standby to be that one-on-one. So although we're reducing, and that seems of a concern, I will tell you that the ESE has laid out a plan to support those 10 schools if a crisis arises. So you're going to want to mull that over.
So these 9 that are going to be kind of floaters, what are they going to?
Right.
Will they be at? I mean, will they have?
They are.
Where will they be? I mean, what will they be doing on a regular day-to-day basis?
Right.
Probably getting hit.
And I can tell you, back when I was in the ESE department, we actually had 14. We reduced them because we added to the schools, and they have never sat still. We have always had
I
assignments.
just need-
But I'll let Dr. Alves.
This year currently, the 9, we reduced from 12 to 9 last year when we increased. We're going to keep, these are historical units that we've had paid for out of IDEA. They are assigned, for example, there has been a situation at East Marion this year. We have had one of those 9 at East Marion at least half the week, every week since school started. We have the same thing happening at Westport High School. Westport High School is one of the places that we want to add a behavior specialist because of the large numbers and the students with autism who are on that campus. We've had one of these 9 assigned to Westport to assist them. So by having them have a behavior specialist, now we can have somebody on the first day when we're concerned about College Park getting a new influx of students or NH Jones getting a new group of students, one of those 9 will be assigned to those 2 schools at the beginning to make sure it's running smoothly. They will always be at a school, and it will be based on the needs in the district. It doesn't just have to be elementary. It could be that, I'm trying to think, Lake Weir High School does not have somebody slated to be because they don't have an autism program where we have our biggest need. We may have one of those 9 going to Westport or to Lake Weir High School to support there. So it just depends on the needs of the school, where they're having concerns, what the issues are, and being able. We may have one, we haven't put it all in, because we don't know who's going to be here yet. But we could have one split between Dunellen Elementary and Romeo, because they're getting a large influx of students from Puerto Rico right now. With the earthquake, Marion Oaks, Romeo are getting big influxes of kids from Puerto Rico. So we may have to do that as things change. But they will be assigned to schools, and if a school needs more support than they have. This year, we've had one assigned to Ocala Springs, even though Ocala Springs has 2 behavior techs. We've taken one of our 9 and assigned them there because of a need they had at their school.
Okay, I just want to be sure, and maybe if you can keep us up to date on
Where they are.
so that if we say yes to this, we know that at least they're being used in the proper
I can
way.
give you a list of where they are right now, and then we can, at the beginning of school, give you another list of where we're projecting them to be.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate that.
At least you're flexible to move them as you need them.
Exactly, because you never know exactly where something's going to pop up.
We just, I mean, when I hear about people being kind of on call, I picture the room and they're waiting to be called to
Right,
sit out. Like labor force or something.
They just go from getting bitten and scratched at one school to getting hit, bitten and scratched to another school. And then they stabilize things and then they move
They
on.
go to the school nurse and get a Band-Aid and move on.
All in a day's work.
So that concludes our top portion on page 3. Just a note, our top portion are district funds. So we have 41 new units. Again, those are those ESE paras, and those are those custodians. The second section of that page, the bottom portion, these are all grant funded. This is where your schools are deciding how to use their Title I funds, or their SIG-4, their TESA funds. We do have an overall increase at this time of one instructional para at a Title I for one of the schools' request. So overall, that's an increase of 42 non-instructional, 41 of them being district funded, one being a title funded position. That concludes the summary pages. Again, that whole big booklet behind it is where they're all assigned. And at this time concludes my presentation. For anything I can do to answer questions or any information you need brought back before the 20th.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, on this big packet here,
Yes, ma'am.
if I looked back at the approved staffing plan, the final approved staffing plan last summer, is that what this is being compared to, the -2s, the +2s, or was there some type of changing staffing plan that this approved, this?
Wonderful question. So this is the original board-approved staffing plan, but there's always fluidity in this plan. So on the summary page, you'll see, for example, on the very first page, you'll see Anthony and how many K-3 they have or 4 or 5. That's what they were board approved for. However, it doesn't mean that's what they ended with, because they could have gained units based on 10-day count and things like that. But we always reset to the original. I will tell you, any movement goes from internally from one unit to another equally. So you cannot, we do not take a non-instructional vacancy unit in the float and call that now an instructional unit. You don't cross those lines.
Okay, let me ask you, let me drill down a little harder. If I looked at the support personnel, the paras, that specifically, at the approved staffing plan at the end of the day, and it says, I'm not looking at it, like it says, we've got 20 more paras now compared to, say we had 400 paras, and now this last year, now we gained 20. Was that 400, or whatever the number is, was that what the approved number was when we approved the final plan? Like, are we comparing this plan to the actual plan that we approved, or had it been a living document that was changing and we're comparing it to the living document that changed? So what I want to know is, did the schools get what we approved that they get last summer? Are we working from that document right now?
You are not. You are working from the original board approved.
That's what I'm talking about, the original board approved. Wasn't the final approved
Not
like
the
in
final, because,
August or something, or?
well, no, it's only approved once. So for example.
This was approved like a year ago.
Yes. Yes, actually, the 26th. So, for example, if you approved 400 paras, then we cannot go above that. But we may take the para from Anthony because we had a reduction in a class, and we may have moved it over to SPAR. But we never go past the total number of
Do you go
paras.
under the total number?
We can go under, because we do have
So
reserve.
That's what I'm getting to.
And-
How
and-
much did we get under?
I would have to research that.
How much did we go under our original? That's kind of where I'm going here, is where are we compared to, like, what we approved last
have
year and what we actually, where we are right now? Where we are right
I
now?
have that answer. So for paras, we're straight even. What was board approved, we've used every one of those units, including the ones that were in what we call the reserve or the float.
Okay.
For teaching units, we have 3 left.
Okay.
That's where we are. If you look, and back to the summary page, under basic unit, and you see other, and you see 41, last year we asked for 50. That's our reserve. But our reserve will oftentimes get frozen and then reduced, because we still have the whole budget process to be added to it. So if we need to take units, our first go-to is to take from the float and then get it down to what we believe is reasonable, which may be 20.
Okay, so where's my approved I'll call you. I'll just call you and go through this with you and see where we are to make sure
Absolutely.
we've got those people in our schools right.
And I welcome that, please. I'd like to get every question answered to your satisfaction.
I'll call you. Thank you.
And what is going on, like, when I look at Anthony, like, I see the ASD mod or whatever, and it has -4, and I see some other things, so I'm curious what's taking place out there.
So I'm going to ask Ms. Albies, because we've had some unit changes on those.
Okay. The minus at Anthony is because they actually aren't a -4, I don't believe, but I don't have my paper in front of me. Anthony had ASD modified and ASD general curriculum. They were at a point with the ASD general curriculum that they needed an additional allocation next year. They do not have space for another allocation, and they are actually bursting at the seams right now. So the decision was made to move the ASD general curriculum off Anthony's campus, and they will now be on Wyoming Park's campus. ASD modified will stay on Anthony's campus, and they were getting a +1 modified ASD. Anthony is getting the Wyoming is getting the 2 from Anthony, and they're getting a +1 ASD general. So that's where those switch numbers are coming.
Okay. 'Cause I'm like, I didn't know. And then also, what's happening at East Marion? Wait, excuse me.
So Ms. Keinert will come up too. She's the area
Marion,
director
Wait a
for all
minute, hold
the
on, was that the one? Maybe it wasn't that, it was Reddick? Reddick,
Reddick, yes.
yeah. So it's,
Okay, Reddick is -1 EBD. They do not have enough numbers starting this school year to support 3 classrooms. What we do is when we start looking at these numbers, we roll students forward. So we put the 5th graders up to 6th, we move 8th graders up to 9, and we look at what our incoming numbers are projected to be. Right now, Reddick is projected for 10 students to start the school year. It's not fiscally responsible for me to tell you, you need 3 teachers and 6 paras for 6 children, or 10 children. So what we're doing is we're reducing Reddick by 1 EBD classroom and the 2 paras. They are getting 2 pre-K classrooms. And so that's their change. They're getting 2 pre-K -1 EBD.
okay. And so how many EBD, they have 10 now?
No, they
Or
will have 10 to start the school year.
how many do they have this year in there?
There are 13 total this year, but 3 are 5th graders.
The 3, okay, so then there'll be the 10, okay.
And that's something that, Ms. King, we will have to continue to keep an eye on, because right now we're projected to have 10, but as you know, if we increase numbers, that's certainly something that we will be having conversation on, making sure that we have the correct support there.
Okay, because that's been tough. And then I think Ms. Barbin's, hey, stop it. Why I think I mentioned East Marion at the beginning is because it was on the school staffing plan and it had the -2, but I can't find it on the second page.
Yes, so it would be better if each of you want to go individually through your schools. There are different views that I have that I can show you exactly where those changes are, because these are summary pages that you might see a +2 on this page, but then there's a -4 on a different page.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, well, then I'll call it that. And that was my last school, but those 3 just kind of jumped out at me because I know they've needed attention this year.
And if you
So,
need any specific questions, feel free to contact me. I'll be glad to meet with anybody who wants to go through each one of the pages. We've spent a lot of hours to make sure that we're right where we need to be.
okay, thank you.
My questions are a little bit more broad, and I do have a few of them. My first one is that in this past budget that we're still working under, it was my understanding anyway that we were going to have a kindergarten para for each kindergarten classroom. And then my understanding was that if a kindergarten para left, that they were going to be attritioned out. And therefore then, say, just as an example, school A that had 2 kindergarten classrooms would now be sharing a kindergarten para.
I can assure you that every kindergarten teacher has a kindergarten para for next school year.
Okay,
I can
Great.
100% assure you that that's how it's assigned
Okay.
and will be filled.
Okay. And then what about first grade? Because I think we were doing 1 para for each first grade level, like they would share 1 para across however many first grade classrooms they had.
So first grade, we have left it alone to attrition out, and the reason being is because those are referendum, and a lot of schools pick up those pairs through their Title I or their TESA. For example, we just received TESA approval, and we have a school getting 8 pairs. So a lot of that we can move into a grant funded, and the principal has those funds to do it. The district doesn't have the funds to maintain those first grade pairs.
Okay, and as long as the schools are getting what they need, because the TISA, it's a lot of money, and it's great that we get it, but when we don't get it till the second week in January,
Right. Right.
that's a systems issue for another conversation
And if you remember,
at a different level.
we had a shift in Title I to where the bulk of the money is the discretion of the principal, and I'll tell you that those are the things that the principals do fund it. And I honestly say in my professional view, we just, I have the same concern about using referendum to continue to fund units that may sunset. And so this is a way to not pick up a district cost to allow schools to pick up those pairs through their grant funding.
What about all the kindergarten paras? Are some of those funded through referendum now?
All of them are funded.
All of them are.
All of them are.
Yes.
And we're going to be in trouble
We are.
when that sunsets.
Yes.
it's not going to sunset.
And our Title I, is Title I money available at the beginning of the school year, or prior to the beginning of the school year, so that,
So I'll let Ms. Boston Ellis, I will tell you that there is a delay.
Boston
Boston or
Ellis.
Boston Ellis? There's a delay, but there's not a delay in moving on those, unlike some grants.
The only thing that's going to make it sunset is if we don't do what we promised the people we were going to do.
Our Title I funds, we are able to use 25% of our Title I funds up front.
Okay.
And so usually that covers salaries, it covers some initial PD, it covers resources, curriculum items. There are a few things that we kind of push back, but we're only allowed to use about 25% of that Title I funds until it is approved by DOE.
Got it. Because it seems to be coming from the school level that they, for the most part, feel like they've got plenty of programs, plenty of resources. What they need are those adults in the classroom to give this very intensive support to these kids that the data just shows how far behind they are. And, in the old days, we had, both parents didn't work necessarily. The mom would come to the school and be a room mother. And so maybe we didn't need so many paras back then because more people were available. But now the schools are having to shoulder so much more of the load, and it's evidenced by even the social work assistants. I'm just kind of going down my list here, if you'll bear with me. It looks to me here like the social work assistants, there's not going to be any added, and thinking what Dr. Mayer was saying about the mental health allocation and the focus shifting from hardening to support. That is an area when we have social work assistants going out to homes to find out why kids are so habitually absent and tardy. That is very labor intensive. But if those kids that aren't coming to school, if their scores are counting against us, and they are, then we have to make sure that we've got an army in place almost to get these kids in school, to support them when they are in school, so teachers can teach and finally break this cycle.
One more thing about Title I. A lot of our schools have a lot of personnel in Title I already, but what we have to look at also is the amount that each school is allocated per year. It's based on Survey 3, so depending on that survey, those numbers, that allocation could go up or down. And if you continue to add people to it, what happens when a school's allocation does not even support the number of personnel that's in that budget. So then that goes
Back
back
to
to
the general fund.
Lisa Boston Ellis.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, which she doesn't want to hear, but that's what happens, with that. And also with more and more charter schools coming in, they are added, private schools being added, we're having to
Losing money,
divvy some of our monies for that as well.
Well-
So, principals certainly have the discretion to add, but they need to make sure that they look forward and are able to fund those people for the following year.
Right, right, and I agree with that 100%. And in the mental health allocation, for example, hopefully that will continue to increase, and we will be able to use some of those dollars to support our social workers that are in the trenches, that are tasked with a monumental task. We'll just leave that right there. Thinking in terms of Evergreen and also Oak Crest, we're spending quite a few $100,000 externally operating both of these schools. So it would seem to me that there is money available to support when we're forced, more or less, to have to do it. And then the task becomes when, because I'm a very optimistic, positive person, when both of these schools come out from external operation this year, and we all celebrate that, and once the confetti is dropped, then it's like, okay, and I'm sure plans are already happening in how to continue to support these schools. But the teachers at Oak Crest and Evergreen and the rest of the staff there really need to know what our plan is very, very soon, because we have a couple things against us. One of them is that redistricting was long overdue. It absolutely had to happen, but that's going to reduce the population at Evergreen. And it would appear that with the reduced population, if we bring in pre-K, if we bring in a magnet program, I'm not sure what we're going to end up doing right at the moment. I'm sure all of the brainstorming is ongoing, not just in my head. But the teachers need some reassurance that are they going to have a job at Evergreen next year or are they not? And if our numbers are going to be low in the beginning, that might need to be okay, because if they've been sitting at 25 kindergarten schools and students in a struggling school, then would it be the worst thing in the world for them to start the school year with 15 in each classroom, which is probably where it should have been all along anyway. I know I'm saying a lot.
That's all right.
It's what's on my mind.
I understand. And as of right now, we haven't removed any support from Oak Crest and Evergreen. And it's my understanding that we don't plan on doing that, but we do have to come to the table and hammer out what are we going to do with the decisions that have to be made with Evergreen based on what the future holds. And I think we're all just waiting to see what that is as we continue to brainstorm ideas about how do we move that along. So we have some things that have to happen before we can make those adjustments.
Well, and talking about Evergreen and the charter school issue and all that, I had to sort of giggle. I was listening to the DOE when we were talking about negotiating with the charter schools. And she said, well, you can do that, you can negotiate with the charter companies. I got news for everybody. I can't picture a charter company business coming in when we've just got 200 or 300 kids over there. So I think I think for the DOE to be saying, oh, just negotiate, I think it's going to be hard for us to even if they make us do this, let's say the sky fell and we didn't make the C and whatever. I know some of these charter school operators. I haven't heard anybody say they want to go to work for a school that's got 200 kids, not 400 kids, because that affects their funding. And so they won't even be able to run the school. That'd be kind of like the situation that Francis Marion just got out of. They didn't have enough kids to fund their school. So why would a charter school company want to come in and take a small number of charter schools? So I really don't think, and it was kind of comical when I heard the DOE say, you just negotiate that with the charter company. I don't know that we're going to have any companies to negotiate with on a school with that few numbers.
And that'll be music to the majority of the community.
That wasn't the plan that we sent.
Yeah, but I mean the like she was saying, we need a chart, you just have to negotiate the charter
gotcha,
school.
gotcha.
I'm saying negotiate with unicorns, because I don't know that there's a charter company out there that's gonna take a school with this few numbers.
That'll probably be music to the majority of the community's ears.
They don't want one exactly.
Ms. Dobbins, you have anything else?
Yes, that does conclude. I again encourage you to reach out to directors or myself for questions. I'll see you back on the 20th. I do just have to say that I really appreciate the efforts and the time of our district staff and our departments. They've worked tremendously on both these plans, and behind the scenes, and I'm sure they're watching, Deborah Richardson does our unit control. This Excel document is over 100 tabs, and every cell connects to each other, and I've tried to find a web-based program out there, and there's not one, and I can tell you districts reach out to us because our sheet works. It just seems very archaic, but I would welcome, someone could get rich at designing a web design on.
Probably one of our IB kids.
Yes, exactly.
The one
But
that
it
helped
is
design
a
Facebook.
It is a massive document, and Deborah Richardson and Anna Ramirez and myself have worked late. Welcome that late. Just we need Visine because it gets blurred after a while. So just a shout out to them to say thank you, and thank you each.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you
please
very much.
convey our appreciation for all that
Everybody.
too. Thank you.
Any other comments? Any public comments? All right. Well, we've been ready to adjourn. We have board concerns. Got board concerns? Any board concerns? Board concerns, any board concerns? Dr. Mayor?
No, sir.
Stacy? Ms. McCall?
I just want to say that I felt we had a very good trip down to Pasco County last Friday, where we looked at their health clinic model. We got some good data, and stay tuned, because this is going to be a journey, and it's not going to be a quick journey, but it's certainly something that we need to continue to look at. But I thank Ms. Lively for putting it together, and it was very eye-opening, and stay tuned. Good things to come, I hope.
Cool.
That's all I have.
That lines up with just my reminder. Again, on the healthcare side, Radiology Associates is having their second Mammogram Fest this coming Saturday, I believe it is, for our school board employees. And so please, if you haven't already made your appointment, avail yourself of that. It is a wonderful day of wellness for women, in addition to the mammograms and getting your results right away. They also, through CTE program, they had manicures and all kinds of different cool things a few months ago. So that continues in. Thank you, that's all I have.
You'll make these two requests for attorney-client sessions, and that'll fall for the 20th, and then you'll go into your shade.
Ms. King?
I'm good, thank you.
No worries.
Chair recognizes the board's attorney, Suzanne Green.
Good morning. Board members, on behalf of Bice Cole Law Firm, I am notifying you that advice is needed regarding the pending litigation-style Doe case. Pursuant to Section 286.011, open paren 8, close paren, Florida statute, known as the Government in the Sunshine Act, I am requesting a session with the board for the purposes of discussing settlement negotiation and strategy related to this matter. I will ask the board's clerk to cause reasonable public notice of the time and date of this session and the names of persons attending to be published. It is suggested that this session be held following the February 20th, 2020 administrative briefing and work session scheduled for 9 a.m. As required by statute, only the following individuals will be present: Eric Cummings, Chair; Nancy Thrower, Vice Chair; Kelly King, School Board Member; Beth McCall, School Board Member; Nancy Stacy, School Board Member; Superintendent Dr. Heidi Mayer; Suzanne Green, Interim School Board Attorney. I will ask a court reporter to record this session, also as required by statute. His or her notes will be fully transcribed and filed with the clerk of the school board. Upon the conclusion of litigation, the transcript will be made public for record.
I recommend the board hold an attorney-client session pursuant to Section 286.0118, Florida statute, to discuss pending litigation. If there are no objections, I will instruct our attorney to schedule the attorney-client session to be held following the February 20th, 2020 administrative briefing and work session, starting approximately at 11 o'clock a.m. Any objections? Chair recognizes the board's attorney, Suzanne Green.
Board members, again, on behalf of the Bicycle Law Firm, I am notifying you that advice is needed regarding the pending litigation styled Kaylee Moffitt versus Marion County Public School pursuant to Section 286.011, open paren 8, close paren, comma, Florida statutes known as the Government in the Sunshine Act. I am requesting a session with the board for the purpose of discussing settlement negotiations and strategy related to this matter. I will ask the board's clerk to cause reasonable public notice of the time and date of this session and the names of persons attending to be published. It is suggested that the session be held following the February 20th, 2020 administrative briefing and work session scheduled for 9 a.m. As required by statute, only the following individuals will be present: Eric Cummings, Chair; Nancy Thrower, Vice Chair; Kelly King, School Board Member; Beth McCall, School Board Member; Nancy Stacy, School Board Member; Superintendent Dr. Heidi Mayer; Suzanne Green, Interim School Board Attorney. I will ask a court reporter to record the session also as required by statute. His or her notes will be fully transcribed and filed with the clerk of the school board. Upon the conclusion of the litigation, the transcript will be made public.
I recommend the board hold an attorney-client session pursuant to Section 286.0118 Florida statutes to discuss pending litigation. If there are no objections, I will instruct our attorney to schedule attorney-client session to be held following the February 20th, 2020 administrative briefing and work session, starting at approximately 11 o'clock a.m. Let me make a correction. Let me go back to the other one. I think I gave the wrong time for that one. For the record, that meeting will be starting, the Doe case will be starting approximately at 11:30 a.m. For the record, it's correction. Chair recognizes the board's attorney, Suzanne Green.
Board members, I am notifying you that advice is needed regarding school safety concerns pursuant to Section 286.011, open paren 8, close paren, comma, Florida statutes. A prior attorney requested a session with the board for the sole purpose of discussing school safety. As required by statute, only the superintendent or designee, board members, and legal counsel can be present.
We acknowledge your request. The terms appear to be in compliance with Florida statutes. Board members, you have heard our attorney's request. As chair, I announce a shade session. The statute states that I must also announce the commencement of the session, the estimated length of the session, and the names of the person attending. The session will commence as soon as the room is cleared, following a 5-minute recess to clear the room. It will last approximately 1 hour. For the record, the names of the person attending are Kelly King, Eric Cummings, Nancy Stacy, Nancy Thrower, Beth McCall, Superintendent Heidi Mayer, School Board Attorney Suzanne Green, and Dennis McFadden. I declare a recess to be followed by a shade session. Recess at. Wait.
Before we recess, I just needed to mention this, and it's something I need the help of the board with. It's on the personal side, and it has to do with our dates for the superintendent search timeline. I have a conflict with April 2nd, and I would like to propose possibly changing that date, if possible, to Tuesday, March 31st. I really do not want to miss the developing and finalizing of the interview questions and procedures. If it was something I could change, I would. So.
I'm fine with that. I don't have a problem.
And I hope it's early enough where Ray and Associates won't have a problem with it either. Again, I appreciate your support.
March 31st.
Yes.
So I guess it's kind of pending what they can work out.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Because I'm fine with it. Okay, thank
For the
you.
record. All right. Recess at 11:13 a.m.
Thank you, guys.